We've got to move fast. It seems like there are fewer days than there should be for some reason in the syllabus, because normally I'm able to cover this book in 2 days, and nope. Picking up with chapter Gertie, chapter 3. We're going to skip a lot, but early on in that chapter, page 24 and such, is when Taryn learns who Call is. Or maybe it should be better phrased, what Call is. That Call is a hero, a warrior, the kind of person that Taryn, at this point at least, thinks he wants to be. And then they run into Gertie, and Gwydion explains who Gertie is. Notice, so Gwydion's had prior experience with him. And on page 29, Taryn says, right in the middle of the book, right in the middle of the page, what a disgusting beast. What a nasty, vicious Gwydion. Oh, he is not bad at heart. Notice the distinction between what they're saying. Taryn's focusing on what, while Gwydion focuses on what? What's Taryn looking at? His appearance. Okay? Gwydion, you can't see his heart. But again, Taryn hasn't had prior experience. Gwydion has. Gwydion knows there is, deep good, let's say, in him. He would love to be wicked and terrifying, though he cannot quite manage it. He feels so sorry for himself, it is hard not to be angry with him, etc., etc. Okay? Chapter 4, titled The Gwithaints. Okay? Page 34. Gwydion has mentioned that they've been seen by the Cauldron born, or by the Gwithaints, excuse me, and that they are surely, Gwithaints, the birds, kind of like the harpies in Greek mythology. Well, take that back. Not at all like the harpies in Greek mythology. Like big vultures, but with an attitude. I mean, they don't fly away when you come by them. They come at you, kind of a thing. Taryn, if only they hadn't seen us. You know what kind of statement is that? If only. Everything that comes after if only is what? A wish, a hypothetical. It is my brain is absolutely fried this morning. So I might be writing down the wrong word. No, I don't think it is. It's something that indicates a condition contrary to fact, contrary to reality. If only I had $1 million, necessarily means, right? I don't have $1 million, right? If only they hadn't seen us. There is no use regretting what has happened. What does Gwydion mean besides this, besides the obvious? Notice he doesn't say, there's no use regretting what is happening. It's what has happened. Right? Why? What can we not do about last Thursday or Friday in Kabul? We can't change it. We can't make that suicide bomber unexplode. Like you see in, Bugs Bunny, cartoons and stuff, where something happens and then every now and then it'll reverse. The past is the past. One way or another, Iran would have learned of us. In other words, it was bound to happen, Taryn. What is this showing us about Gwydion? Okay, he's wise, obviously. He's also experienced. He's done this before. He knows how spies work and such. All right? So then he goes on, top of the next page, and talks about Cauldron born. These are individuals who were corpses thrown in the cauldron and came out animated bodies. I'm not saying alive. They're not alive. They're not sentient. There is no soul. There is no consciousness there anymore. They are merely animated corpses. They are utterly without pity, mercy, or pity. Kind of interesting. Those are the two words in the beginning of The Lord of the Rings in the chapter Shadow of the Past that Gandalf says the reason Bilbo was able to live as long as he did and give up the ring at the end was because he began his ownership of the ring with pity and mercy. And, Alexander latches on those two virtues here. They are without mercy or pity. For Iran has worked still greater evil upon them. He has destroyed the remembrance of themselves as living men. They have no memory of tears or laughter, of sorrow or loving kindness. Notice what he puts first, by the way, in those memories. No remembrance of tears or of sorrow. Why put tears and sorrow before laughter and loving kindness? I could be way off base here. But I kind of think he's saying something about the nature of human life. Partially, we remember more sad times.
Sadness gives us empathy.
Sadness gives us empathy. We have to deal with the sadness and the sorrow. There's this ideology, I think at least, there's this ideology today that says the world should be perfect. Well, wake up, Buttercup, because it ain't perfect. It ain't ever going to be perfect, no matter how hard we try. Because there's always going to be some little darkness. The reason Marx was totally wrong ultimately in terms of his ideology, because he thought, he could create this utopia by just training people's minds. It's not the minds. Why did we quote unquote lose in Afghanistan? You can have the greatest military, you can have the most powerful might in the world, but what has to change? What's inside? Go back to Gertie. He looks vicious on the outside, but inside, his heart doesn't need to change. His heart is good. They have no memory of tears or laughter, of sorrow or loving kindness. Those four things, notice, are all aspects of what he says make us human. Our tears and our sorrow make us human, as well as our laughter and our joy. There's a scene in the Harry Potter novels. Somebody dies, and Harry's pretty pissed off. Won't say any names. And Dumbledore has to teach Harry, this pain that you're now feeling is part of what makes you human. Anybody remember, or if you've read the novels, know what Harry says? Then I don't want to be human anymore. He doesn't want to face that pain. He doesn't want to face that suffering and that sorrow. Interestingly, by the seventh book, he learns how to face it. He learns how to face death. Right? Among all Iran's deeds, this is one of the cruelest. Why? Because it has removed, essentially, part of the purpose for their being. Okay? So, let's see here. Taryn wakes up middle of the night, page 37. I don't have time to, since we're supposed to finish this. Jumps into the undergrowth. He thinks, there are spies or enemy troops essentially upon them, and it's just Gertie. And he yells at Gertie. Gwydion tells Terran, calm down. And Terran says, page 37 at the bottom, save your own life next time. He's not talking to Gertie, he's talking to Gwydion. I should have known a great war leader needs no help from an assistant pig keeper. What's one of the things Terran is caught up on? That last sentence kind of gives it away a little bit. Titles. Ooh, great war leader. Lowly slime of the earth. Assistant pig keeper. Quote unquote identities. What is Gwydion, if you're going to say Terran's caught up in that, what's Gwydion caught up in? What's really real? What's really important? And titles are not important. They really aren't. What do titles supposedly mean? They confer some kind of authority, some kind of respect. But where does authority, where do authority and respect really come from? What do you mean by pointing to your head? Experience. But where do they come from? I mean, I kind of agree. Okay. If I say you should respect me, what does that mean on my part? What must I do? It's earned, right? It's just not automatically given. Now, yeah, we do say, well, there is some respect that goes with the title. Office of the presidency. No matter what you think of the occupant of the White House at any particular time in history, there's this mentality that says, because of that office, the individual deserves respect. There are arguments to be made for that. I think there are arguments to be made completely for the opposite. Why the individual occupying it at any particular moment in time is not worthy of the title, so to speak. Let's look at what Gwydion says in response. Unlike assistant pig keepers, he uses the title because Terran did. If that's what you want to think of yourself as, fine. I've scorned the help of no man. Man. Is Terran a man? No. He's a boy. Yes, he is male. Okay. But he's not a man. He's still a boy. Or at the very most, he's an adolescent. On the cusp. Right? And you should know better than to jump into thorn bushes without first making sure what you will find. See, what does Gwydion not realize yet? What's he not aware of? Terran kind of gave it away. Terran jumped into the bushes. Why? He thought Gwydion's life was in danger. So when you think so-and-so's life is in danger, do you pause and think first? So Terran's like, no, you act and then ask questions. Save your anger for a better purpose. He hesitates and looks carefully at Terran. I believe you did think my life. It dawns on him, and he suddenly realizes, wait, you were sacrificing yourself. If I'd known it was only that stupid, silly Gertie. Gwydion, the fact is you did not. In other words, that you didn't know it was Gertie, that's what makes it so important. So I shall take the intention for the deed. You intended to save my life, right? What is the last three words of the sentence imply? about, in Gwydion's mind at least, about that intention. You saved my life. He says, that's what you intended to do, so I'm going to take it as that's what you did. There's a scene in Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream where it's towards the end of the play, at the beginning of the play within the play, when Duke Theseus is talking to others, and they're like, come on, we don't want to watch these morons put on this little play. They've never done anything with their minds before. They're just handymen, so to speak. They're going to botch it. And Theseus says, there have been places I've gone to before where somebody has worked up a really great welcome speech. And that individual comes into my presence and just completely can't get it out. And there have been others, he said, who haven't had any, and they just, their words just flow fluently. And his point is, however they do this play, we should take what they intend to do as what they do. They intend to do what? They're putting on the play. It's part of the wedding revels of Theseus and his wife. They are intending to honor us. He says, we should take it as such. The other nobility are kind of like, oh, the riffraff, which is really interesting in this play. And Theseus is like, no, not the riffraff. He's kind of saying, they are worthy of our respect. It doesn't only go the other way, right? Fact is, you did not, so I shall take the intention for the deed. You may be many other things, Terran of Caer Dallben, but I see you are no coward. I offer you my thanks, he adds, bowing deeply. The prince, the son of the High King, bows. Okay, titles 2, Assistant Big Boy. That's respect. What did Terran do? He willingly sacrificed himself. Yeah, he didn't have to go through with the sacrifice, but he put himself out there. And that's what Gwydion is saying. Way to go, Terran. How do we know Terran already is not a coward? Where else have we seen it? Louder? When he goes off after him. Okay? So, chapter 5, the broken sword. They run into Akron. A little bit before that, Gwydion does some little magic-y like stuff with some grass. They run into Akron, they get captured, thrown into the dungeons. Page 51 and following in the chapter titled Ilanui, or Ilanui, however you want to pronounce it. She's kind of roaming free, and she sees Terran through the grates of the dungeon door and such. And let's see here. Nope. Chapter turn back. And page 51. She asks if, he could give her the little bauble thing, and he says, little girl, but I'm not a little girl. Haven't I just been and finished telling you? Are you slow-witted? I'm so sorry for you. It's terrible to be dull and stupid. What's your name? I mean, just boom, boom, boom. I'm not a little girl. Haven't I just been and finished telling you? Are you slow-witted? Yes or no? Terran. Yeah. He ain't the brightest bulb in the box, let's put it that way, all right? I'm so sorry for you. So she shows pity for him. It's terrible to be dull and stupid. Dull meaning not sharp. Not dull as in, man, you're boring. Okay? What's your name? Makes me feel funny not knowing someone's name, wrong-footed, you know, or as if I had 3 thumbs on one hand. In our introduction to Arlanwi, what do we immediately learn about her? She likes to talk, okay? So, Taryn says, I'm Taryn of Caerdalban. She goes, nice to meet you. I suppose you're a lord or a warrior or a war leader or bard or a monster. What? It's like, which one of these is not like the other? He says, none of those. Not a lord, not a warrior, not a war leader, not a bard, not a monster. None of those. Well, what else is there? I mean, come on, I've just listed the top, 5? I've given the 5 occupations there are in Predate, so to speak. I'm an assistant pig keeper. Bit his lip as soon as the words were out. How fascinating. Now, does she mean that seriously or facetiously? You're the first we've ever had, unless that poor fellow in the other dungeon is one too. Taryn says, who is it? He's thinking, Gwydion, okay? So we're going to skip a bunch. And it's not Gwydion. Go to page 54 and 55, where we finally hear her name. She tells Taryn her name. I am Arlanwi, daughter of Angarad, daughter of Regat, daughter of... Oh, it's such a bother going through all that. Because what could she do? Matthew 1 and 2. Son of, son of, son of, son of, son of, son of, daughter of, and go all the way back to the beginning. My ancestors are the sea people. I am of the blood of clear half-speech. This LLYR, the LL together is pronounced like HL. This is the Lear, as in Shakespeare's King Lear. Okay? Same mythological character. The Sea King. Achran is my aunt. Though sometimes I don't think she's really my aunt at all. Then what are you doing here? I live here. It must take a lot of explaining before you understand anything. In other words, wow, you're really dense. Okay? She talks about how her parents died, how she ended up there. Skip a bit, go on to the chapter, The Trap. Let's see here. He still doesn't know who the other person is. He still thinks it's Gwydion. Page 60. She gets him out. She says, I've got Melingar, Gwydion's horse. So he's thinking, well, it's got to be Gwydion then. Taryn says, Achran's going to find out. She said, no, she won't. She'll think I'm still locked up. And if she doesn't know I can get out, she can't know I was here. Thoughtful of you to say that. It shows a kind heart. Notice, she interprets again what Taryn has said, just as Gwydion interpreted what Taryn had done. When he says, Achran will know you let us escape, she's going to the conclusion of what that means. And you'll be punished. Okay? It shows a kind heart. And I think that's so much more important than being clever. Ooh, I never made that connection before. Another one of the Harry Potter novels. Because I like to see how authors possibly, get ideas and source material. First Harry Potter novel. At the end, when Harry's about to go through the trap door, actually, he's already gone through the trap door. He's gone through some of the tests. He's got to go through the the last test. And Hermione throws her arms around him, gives him a big hug, and he's like, Hermione, man. And she says, he mentioned how smart she said, Harry, there's cleverness in book learning, et cetera, et cetera. But it's your heart, she tells him. That's all important. Okay? So, they get out. Let's see here. They see the castle. Nope, not yet, they don't. I'm going to skip that part. Taryn calls her a bunch of names at the end of that chapter, The Trap, page 65. And then he apologizes. I didn't mean to call you names, bottom of the page. But there is no reason for you to put yourself in danger. There you go again, she says. I promise to help you escape. That's what I'm doing. I understand about tunnels, and I shouldn't be surprised. What does she mean? There you go again. He's showing his heart. He's showing his concern for others, not for his own safety. Okay? Chapter 8, the barrow. Taryn tells her, he's Taryn of Caer Dallben again. Mentions Dallben. She doesn't know who that is. They find this barrow. A barrow is a mound. Okay? Put over a body sometimes, usually, often there's other things. Most barrows, for example, many barrows, for example, in Denmark are ship burials. There are ship burials in England. Most famous one is one called Sutton Hoo. And when I mean ship, I mean the Sutton Hoo ship was about 90 feet long and about, if I remember, 20 to 30 feet wide. Nearest river was 2 miles away. They had to roll it uphill, put it there, and then pile it over with dirt. And the mound is about 45, 50 feet tall. I mean, it's a lot of dirt we're talking about. Okay? So, they find this barrow, and in the barrow, they find a dead king, essentially. Page 71, Taryn says, surely it is the barrow of the king who built this castle. He stepped past the warriors, drew near the figure on the slab. Rich raiment clothed the body, polished stones. Clawed hands still grasped the jeweled hilt of the sword. Taryn recoiled in fear and horror. Okay. But they grab the sword and leave. Okay? Alonwi does, excuse me. They leave. Taryn, pulls her through the opening in the wall, and in a violent explosion, bottom of page 72, a violent explosion that seemed ripped from the very center of the earth's spiral castle crumbled in upon itself. Goes whoosh, right? Chapter 9, Flute Flam. Fluder, notice I'm pronouncing the D's as a D. If it were Welsh, and you've got a pronunciation thing at the back, so I'm pretty sure it should be the th in that, or the, not like the th in thin. So Fluther Flam. Taryn, you're not Gwydion. Duh. Never claimed I was. If you think I'm Gwydion, you're dreadfully mistaken. Okay? So he goes on, page 75, explains who he is. I am Fluther Flam, son of Godo, a bard of the harp at your service. Taryn, I don't need bards. I don't need a harp. It's not going to bring my companion to life. Okay? So they talk about Gwydion and how Taryn thinks he's dead and such. Taryn says he's going to go off to try to find Gwydion on his own. Alonwi and Fluther say, no, you're not. Gertie shows up, pages 80 to 81. And Alonwi says, bottom of page 80, for an assistant pig keeper, you do keep strange company. Because who is one of his company? Gwydion, next in line for the high kingship, okay, and Gertie. What is Gertie? What kind of thing is Gertie? I think Alexander's kind of playing with the idea of what's called, and I could be entirely wrong, the chain of being, okay? Which, links, etc., all the way down. So, lowest form of existence, smallest, tiniest, whatever, gluon, whatever on it is, and the highest form of existence. Okay? If you're a strict materialist, that would probably be us. If you're religious, that would be, be the highest order of supernatural beings. Would not include God. God would be separate. Okay? So, traditional Christian sense, this would be the seraphim and cherubim. They're the highest of the angelic orders. And everything exists linked together. Okay? So you keep coming down. So let's say this is the angelic order up here. Traditionally, there are 9 of the angelic orders. And then this is the human order up here. And then down here is animals, plants, rocks, etc. So, angels, animals, humans. So you get, throughout literature, from almost the earliest, because you see this idea in ancient Greek, Roman at least, up through even today, writers play with it. There's this idea that humanity has its good side and its bad side. Its good side leans towards moving up, and its bad side leans towards dropping down. Or you could say its good side is its angelic nature expressing itself, and its bad side is its bestial nature expressing itself. Right? Gertie is kind of here, right? Gwydion, at the very least, is up here at the peak of the human arc or level, if you want. And Terran is, down here because he is just his words, lowly assistant pig keeper. Notice, he's between the two. Is he going to ascend to become like Gwydion, or is he going to descend and become like Gertie? So, Terran says, page 81, he's no friend of mine. He is a miserable, sneaking wretch who deserted us as soon as we were attacked. Gertie says, no, I didn't. I'm always faithful to mighty lords. Terran, tell the truth. You ran off when we needed you most. Gertie, slashings and gashings are for noble lords, not for poor, weak Gertie. He says, I went to look for help, but you didn't find any. Gertie, no, there were no brave warriors, no help for brave warriors. What else can unhappy Gertie do? He is sorry to see great warriors in distress, so tears are misery, but in battle, what would there be for poor Gertie except hurtful guttings and cuttings of his throat? In other words, how could I have helped you? Alonda, it wasn't brave, but it wasn't stupid either. Gertie, wisdom of a noble lady. She comes to his defense. If Gertie had not gone seeking help, he would not be here to serve you now, but here he is. Yes, faithful Gertie, etc., etc. Okay? So Gertie does tell them his running away hasn't been totally without benefit, because middle of page 82, many more hosts march in the valley with sharp spears. Many more. Okay? So, Terran explains who they are. The undead, if you want, the Cauldron born. Chapter 10, we get the sword Durnwin. So, she can read on the scabbard, draw Durnwin only thou of royal blood, to rule to strike thee. This is on page 86. And she says, I can't read the rest. And Terran's thinking, I should pull the sword. Top of 87. You can't. It says only royal blood. It doesn't mention a word about assistant pig keepers. How can you tell I haven't got royal blood? Terran says. I wasn't born an assistant pig keeper. That is, I didn't have APG, branded on my head when I was born. For all you know, my father might have been a king. Happens all the time in the Book of 3. Notice, Book of 3. She says, never heard of it. But in the first place, I don't think it's good enough to be a king's son or even a king himself. What? It's not good enough to be a king's son or a king himself. Royal blood is just a way of translating. In the old writing, it didn't mean only have royal relatives. I mean, anybody can have those. I don't know. It means you have to be special. It seems to me that if you have it, you don't need to wonder whether you have it. Royal what? We don't find out till an awful lot later. Okay? Terrence, so in other words, you mean I don't have it, whatever the it is. I didn't mean to offend you. For an assistant pig keeper, I think you're quite remarkable. I even think you're the nicest person I've ever met in my life. Maybe she hasn't met many people. It's just that I'm forbidden to let you have the sword, and that's that. I'm forbidden. Why? Why is the sword hers? She's the one who took it from the body. Okay. So Terrence says, what are you going to do with it? Hold on to it. So Flute starts to talk, and they talk about a harp and such. He talks about, he's actually a king of a very small kingdom and such. 1991, Terrence says he's going to go on to Cardathel, which is where the High King Math is, because that's where Gwydion was going to go. He says he's going to give up his quest looking for Henwin, and the others decide they're going to come with him. They take the flight through the hills. Page 96. I'm trying to get through this as quickly as possible. And I did not bring the book, Black Cauldron with me, because I knew we wouldn't finish. Top of page 96. This is, they're making their way through the hills, and they have a moment to pause, and Terran thinks. In Caerdalban, he had dreamed of being a hero. But dreaming, he had come to learn, was easy. And at Caerdalban, no lives depended on his judgment. That's the nice thing about fantasy. You can either achieve what you want, or you cannot achieve it, but there's no loss. He longed for Gwydion's strength and guidance. His own strength, he feared, was not equal to his task. Go back to the author's note. Most of us are called on to perform tasks far beyond what we are called to do. What's his task? Right here. To make it from where they are, which, if you looked at the map at the beginning of the book, they're like, I'm trying to think how it is. They're like way down here, almost it'd be like southeastern from your perspective, looking at it, okay? And they're coming way up here to the top, almost off the map. So they're going to, traverse the known world, so to speak. And we're told, or he thinks, his strength is not equal to his task. What are the tasks he's done all throughout his life? Has he ever known a really difficult task? Has he ever been tried, tested? Not as far as we know. We do know he failed miserably when he tried to make a sword. Pretty much horseshoes too. Okay? So they keep going. And we're going to skip a bunch. We have the wolves show up. Page 107. Terran tells them, he thanks them essentially for coming along, or actually not for coming along, but for being part of this company. He says at the middle of the page, At first I thought I would be able to reach Caer by myself. I see now that I wouldn't have got even this far without help. It is a good destiny that brings me such brave companions. What does he mean? I see now I wouldn't have got this far without help. How far would he have gotten? I mean, if you consider all the help he's received. Not very far outside Caer, right? I mean, it's Gwydion who essentially rescues him from the Horned King. There you've done it again, Eilonwy cries out. That's all you care about. Someone to help you carry spears and swords and what all. It could be anybody, and you'd be just as pleased. Taren of Caer, I'm not speaking to you anymore. What? Why did she do this? What does it appear, or, I don't know, maybe it's too early to ask this question. How long have Taren and Eilonwy known each other? Or Eilonwy? Day? 2 days, maybe? Can you tell anything about their relationship? As far as there is a relationship, you know? She kind of likes him. I don't mean just, interesting to have around. I mean, there's the beginning of an affection there. And Taren, like most boys his age, is what? Yeah, it's completely beyond him. Okay? Taren goes on, at home, nothing ever happened. Now, everything happens. In other words, every moment requires something new. But somehow I can never seem to make it come out right. In other words, no matter what I do, I what? I fail. I screw up. And I think that's in response to what Eilonwy just said. In other words, I wasn't trying to show you disrespect. But I opened my mouth and so he turns away from her. All right? They keep going, chapter 13. They make it to the hidden valley. And Taren immediately knows, page 114, who this guy is. I know who you are. You're Medwin. Am I? Yes, I have been called that. It's almost like Obi-Wan Kenobi going, Obi-Wan. I haven't heard that name in a long... Medwin, kind of same thing. So Taren says who he is, who he's been with, etc., etc. All right. Medwin says, no, Henwin is not here. And the animals come up to them and are not afraid of them. Taren even recognizes chickens from Caer that are missing. And Medwin tells them, page 119, every living thing deserves our respect. Who? Back up for a second. Who would Medwin be in our world kind of mythology, if you want to use that phrase? Noah. He's the Noah figure. Every living thing deserves our respect, be it humble or proud. And notice he's rubbing Gertie's forehead. Be it humble or proud, and I kind of imagine, could be totally wrong here. When he says proud, he looks at Taren. Ugly, back to Gertie, or beautiful, in glances at Eilonwy. If I were to film this, that's what I would have him do. Taren, I wouldn't want to say that about the Gwythains. I feel only sorrow for those unhappy creatures. Once long ago, they were as free as other birds, gentle and trusting. Aran did what? He tortured and twisted them. Unlike Tolkien's orcs, however, Gwythains can be, to use religious language, redeemed. They can be brought back to what they're supposed to be. The orcs don't have a what they're supposed to be. They're just totally wrong. All right? Terran wonders if Gertie should stay with Medwin. Medwin says, I don't know that he'd be safer here. Bottom of 119, top of 120. Gertie's misfortune is that he is neither one thing nor the other. He's neither fully animal nor is he fully human. He has lost the wisdom of animals and has not gained the learning of men. Therefore, both shunned him. Were he to do something purposeful, it would mean much to him. Purposeful, meaning having a purpose. It's like Gertie can't plan ahead. He lacks that kind of volition. Right? I doubt he'll delay your journey. He'll be able to walk as well as you. I urge you to take him. He may even find his own way of serving you. Neither refuse to give help when it is needed, nor refuse to accept it when it is offered. Don't give help when it's needed. Don't refuse help when it's offered. Okay? And he goes on and tells a story about, because this guy learned that lesson from an ant. Medwin continues, page 121. I'm skipping a bunch. I've studied the race of men. I've seen that alone you stand as weak reeds by a lake. You must learn to help yourselves. That is true. But you must also learn to help one another. Are you not, all of you, lame ants? That is, we can only do so much on our own. But when we band together, we can do much, much more. Terran has already said that. He has already said, I intended to go to Caer but now I see I wouldn't have even gotten this far if it weren't for you guys. Right? So Medwin talks about, this place is a place of peace. Talks about the ship and such. Black Lake. Page 124, towards the bottom. Karen says, need to get going. But he also says, this is a journey I am eager to end. He needs to get to Caer. That's not the end, right? That's the midpoint. What's the end? Go back home. There are times when I fear I shall not see Caer again. What did he want before he left Caer? To leave. Why did he want to leave? To live. To really experience life. To become a warrior and such. Medwin. It is not given to men to know the ends of their journeys. Terran's thinking, my little journey right here, right now. Medwin's talking about, the journey of your life. You don't know how your life is going to end. That's one meaning of that word, ends. It's completion. It's final point, right? What's the other meaning of the word ends? One, put it this way. It is not given to men to know the purposes of their existence. If you take journeys as being life. Ends there being used in the old Greek sense of why something exists. So one of the basic philosophical questions philosophers have argued and others have argued that everybody has to wrestle with at some point in their life. Why am I here? What is my point? Some of you wrestled with that a little bit, maybe when you were deciding on a major. Or maybe you knew from a point in your life, this is what you wanted to do for a living. Because bear in mind, what you do for a living has nothing to do with who/what you are. It's a job. It's not you, okay? it may be that you will never return to the places dearest to you. You may never go back to Caradolvin, Taryn. Is that an encouraging thought to tell this kid at this point? I mean, he's 10 to 12 years old. Maybe he's a little bit older. I don't think so. I don't think he's 10. I think he's 12. At most 14. And maybe you will never return to the places dearest to you. And that would mean he would never see Dalvin again. He would never see Call again. But how can that matter if what you must do is here and now? In other words, quit thinking about 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, and think about what instead. How do you begin any work? How do you begin running a marathon? You used to run marathons, half marathons. You take that first step. You do that first run. You know, back when I was running a lot, got runners roll and stuff, from couch potato to 5K, or from couch potato to 3K, 1.5 miles kind of thing. In 6 weeks, or in some people's case, in 6 months, because it means putting the potato chips down, getting off the couch. That's the first step, But how can that matter if what you must do is here and now? Don't worry about all that other stuff here. That'll happen when? As you follow the path, or as you make the path, whichever way you want to put it. Karen, I think that if I knew I were not to see my own home again, I would be happy to stay in this valley. If I could know that I could never go back to Caradolvin, then I'd want to stay here. Well, staying here implies what? Not finishing his quest. Not going to Caradolvin. Staying here means I'm done. Time out. Like Frodo tells Gandalf, I'm not made for perilous quests. Medwin, your heart is young and unformed. Wow. He doesn't mean this. He means the other heart that is in here. Your courage, your courage. It's young. That is, he doesn't know, I think. Maybe Darren told him. He jumped in the briar bushes, right? To save Gwydion. That's raw courage. It's unformed, meaning what? What would Michael Jordan be today if he never touched a basketball? Maybe. Would we know? Probably not. Okay. But what if he had touched a basketball, and never practiced? You can have that raw talent. But that raw talent is like the proverbial diamond in the rough. It's worthless in the rough, buried underground. What must happen to the talent? It's got to be sharpened. It's got to be honed. It's got to be trained. Okay? Your heart is young and unformed. Yet, if I read it well, you are of the few I would welcome here. Darren, I think I could have you stay here. Why? Because you're good. There's good in him. Indeed. You may stay if you choose. Oh, and what did Medwin just do? That's a temptation. I don't mean he's the tempter. I just mean, hey, Taryn, all your problems will go away. Right? No Gwithins, no wolves, no horned king. Surely you can entrust your task to your friends. Yeah, Fluther and Alonwy and Gertie, they'll do it for you. You don't need to do it. No. I I've taken it on myself through my own choice. They're only there, why? Because of him. If that is so, then you can give it up through your own choice. I mean, Medwin's really playing devil's advocate here. He's doing what? He's testing that unformed heart. He's trying to see what its boundaries are, what its limits are. And in doing so, helping Terran do what? Give it form, give it shape, make it compact, make it hard. We're going to see Terran's going to meet someone later. He's going to meet several people later. They're going to teach him various trades. And one of those trades is going to be smithing, blacksmithing. And the guy's going to talk to Terran about life. Life is like a forge. And you get beat, you get heated up, and you get beat, and you get heated up. And what does all that do? It doesn't break you like Terran did with his feeble sword at the beginning. Instead, it tempers you. Like when you temper steel, what are you doing to it? You're making it harder and unbreakable. Terran. So Medwin says, if you chose to do this, then you can unchoose it. No. My decision was made long before this. What's the this? Paradise. I chose to do what I chose to do before I came to this paradise. And he's implying, and I can't undo it because of this. Medwin, then so be it. In other words, if you've ever seen Cecil B. DeMille's Ten Commandments with Yul Brynner and Charlton Heston, it's so let it be written, so let it be done. This is now, it's like fated, all right? And he puts his hand on Terran's head, and they all fall asleep. They get a good night's sleep, all right? They go on. I'd really like to talk about that passage, but we're so far behind. King Idalig, or Idalig. They get captured by the dwarves towards the end of that chapter, page 141. Terran's been warning them, about what's going on in the world above. And King Idalig says, this is a conflict you great Goths must attend to yourselves. In other words, it's your problem, not mine, not ours. The fair folk owe you no allegiance. What are other names for the fair folk? Here they're dwarves, right? What other words? Fairies, elves, leprechauns, all those kind of creatures in Celtic folklore. Okay? He says, the reason we're down here is because you drove us down here. So your problems are your problems. Terran, I can't speak for any man but myself. I've never robbed you. I have no wish to. In other words, he's saying, don't talk to me about what men years and years and years and years and years ago did to you. That wasn't me. It's not my fault. Okay? I'm not the one who did that to you. He says. And I have no wish to, by the way. My task means more to me than your treasures. If there's ill will between the fair folk and the race of men, it's a matter to be settled between them. But if the Horned King triumphs, if the shadow of Anuvan falls on the land above you, guess what? You're screwed too. It's going to happen to you too. Okay? So, he meets Dolly, and Terran brings up honor and honesty. And at that point, Idalig's like, you just had to say it, because we have to keep our word. So, Dolly goes along with him. What is Dolly's problem? He can't make himself invisible. A dwarf that can't make himself invisible is a pretty useless dwarf. Okay? Middle of page 150. Terran's like, okay, so you can't make yourself invisible. If I could carve gems and do all those other things, I wouldn't mind not being invisible. All I know is vegetables and horseshoes, and not too much about either. Ilanli. It's silly to worry because you can't do something you simply can't do. That's worse than trying to make yourself taller by standing on your head. I have no idea what that last sentence means, but how would you make yourself taller? I guess because your head would be down at ground level. No, that would make you shorter. Nope, don't have any idea what she means there. But the part about to worry about because you can't do something you simply can't do. What does she mean by that? So what does Dolly think is his problem with his invisibility? Can he sometimes? No, he hasn't been able to at all. So it's almost like he has brown hair and wishes he had red hair. And he can't make the hair change color. Right? She goes, well, that's silly. That's stupid. But it's not to Dolly. Why? Because being able to make yourself invisible is part of what makes a dwarf being a dwarf. So he's kind of denied some of his dwarfishness. Right? The fledgling. They find a wounded Gwithaint. Okay? Dolly pulls out his axe, getting ready to kill this thing. Terran, no, don't. It's badly hurt. Dolly, be glad. It'll be easier to kill. I will not have it killed. Top of page 155. It's in pain. It needs help. Okay? Dolly says, no. If we help this thing, it's going to fly straight to Iran. It's going to give our location away. If we do that, we will die. Further, listen to him. Terran, Madeline would not say so. In the hills, he spoke of kindness for all creatures. He told me much about the Gwithaints. I think it's important to bring this one to Caer Dathel. To bring it. We're not just going to help it. No one has ever captured a Gwithaint, as far as I know. Who can tell what value it may have? In other words, now you can read that very negatively. He might be saying what? Louder?
Sell it.
Sell it. What else? Use it. In other words, it's become a captured POW that can be pressed for information. He says it could become very valuable. I think it means valuable information-wise, not valuable monetary-wise. Okay? So, Terran gets Dolly to build him a little cage, and Dolly does. Let's see. Next morning, the cage is empty, page 159. Terran says, just beyond the middle of the page, I've done the wrong thing again as usual. Dolly is right. There's no difference between a fool and an assistant pig keeper. And Ilanli says, that's probably true. But then she goes on and says some other thing. I can't stand people who say, I told you so. Notice, she's not saying I told you so, right? Why does Terran say, I've done the wrong thing again as usual? What are the wrong things he's done? Went after Henry. Dalvin said, don't leave the farm. Okay? What after that? Is jumping in the brambles the wrong thing to do? No. Is trying to rescue Gwydion from Auckland the wrong thing to do? Nope. Is going to Medwin, even though it's accidental, going to the Hidden Valley, is that the wrong thing to do? Nope. Is leaving the Hidden Valley the wrong thing to do? Nope. So what are the wrong things? Okay, the big one. So, chapter 18, Flame of Durnwin. Look at that. I think we might actually finish this. They run into the Horn King. Terran grasps the hilt. He can't pull it out of the scabbard. 169, 170. The Horn King raises his own weapon. This is the very bottom paragraph of 169. As Terran gave a final wrench, the scabbard turned in his hand. A blinding flash split the air in front of him. Lightning seared his arm. He fell into the ground. The sword Durnwin, blazing white with flame, leaped from his hand, fell beyond his reach. The Horn King stands over him. Eilon, we notice, sprang at the antlered man, and he tosses her aside. So what does Eilon do there? She tries to save Terran. In doing that, what is she doing with her own life? Louder? She's risking her own. Okay. A voice cries out behind the Horn King. Terran glimpses a tall figure. The Horn King stands motionless, arm upraised, and Terran passes out. Chapter 19. Hinwin wakes him up. Okay. And Terran asks, where have they taken us? Is this a Nuven? Now, what's he immediately assuming? They've been captured. He didn't recognize that. He didn't recognize that face that he saw. Okay? Eilon laughs. That's exactly the sort of question you might expect from an assistant pit keeper. In other words, wrong again. A Nuven. Ugh. Terran, shut up and tell me where we are. Because she just said like 40 words without saying anything. You aren't supposed to get up yet. But I imagine you just discovered that for yourself when he tries to get up. She still doesn't answer his question. Okay? Wriggling, Hinwin, gets up onto the couch. Terran, the Horn King, what happened? Where? Oh, he's dead. Okay. So Eilon, mentions you went unconscious, etc. How can I tell you anything? Page 173. Let me back up. Terran, Eilon, I want you to tell me very slowly and carefully what happened. If you don't, I'm going to be angry, and you're going to be sorry. How can I tell you anything if you don't want me to talk? In other words, how can I get a word in edgewise? She says, as soon as army saw the Horn King dead, they practically fell apart, etc. Okay. So, Gertie shows up. Fluther shows up. Dolly shows up. And Gwydion shows up, page 175. For a moment, Terran did not recognize him. Instead of the stained cloak and coarse jacket, Gwydion wore the shining raiment of a prince. In other words, he finally has what? The trappings of the prince and war hero. He looks like he ought to have looked when Terran first met him. Now his idol, his image of what a hero looks like has appeared. His rich mantle hung in deep folds. On a chain at his throat gleamed a sun-shaped disc of gold. Why? Because he is one of the summer people who is from the summer country. And because it's summer, its symbol is the sun. His green eyes shone with new depth and power. Terran saw him now as he had always imagined him. Why is it important that Terran saw him the other way first? Notice the image that Terran originally had is not a wrong image. The way he'd originally imagined it is not a false image. It's just not what? It's not the only one. See, Terran thought of this image of the prince hero. And that's all he had. What has Gwydion shown him? Your image, because that's what he was reduced to in Terran's imagination. His image was false and had to be obliterated. See, now the image can be seen because it's part of who Gwydion is. Terran sprang from the couch. Gwydion comes towards him, and Terran bows, drops to one knee. Lord Gwydion. That is no greeting from a friend to a friend. Wait. Pause here. Friend to friend? What's Gwydion saying? There are no lords and no assistant pig keepers here. Friends are or should be what? Equal. Peers. It gives me more pleasure to remember an assistant pig keeper who feared I would poison him in the forest near Cauldron. Terran, I never thought to see you alive. A little more alive than you are. Gwydion smiles. How? Terran began as he noticed a black and battered weapon at Gwydion's side. A gift. A royal gift from a young lady. A little bit of foreshadowing there, by the way. What's the only way gifts can be royal? They're given to you by royalty. Okay? Terran doesn't realize. She does. Terran doesn't realize who Eilonwy is. Even though she told him that she is descended from Angharad, Ragharad, whatever Harad, etc., from the kings of Lear. That makes her obviously royalty, right? Because notice, Terran doesn't call her Princess Eilonwy. And she says, I girded it on him myself. I told him not to draw it, but he's simply stubborn. Fortunately, you did not unsheath it entirely, Gwydion said to Terran. I'm afraid it would have killed you. Okay? Weapon of power. So ancient I believed it no more than a legend, Gwydion says. I thought this thing was not real. Excalibur. There are still deep secrets concerning Dyrnwyn, unknown even to the wisest. Its loss destroyed Spiral Castle was a severe blow to Iran. Okay. So Eilonwy said, as soon as I saw him, I knew he was the one who should keep the sword. Glad it's not mine anymore. So, Gwydion goes on and talks about what happened to him at Spiral Castle when he was taken captive by Ahran. Bottom of that page 177. She threw him into the dungeon. She gripped my arm. Why do you choose death, Lord Gwydion? She cried, when I can offer you eternal life and power beyond the grasp of mortal minds. Huh. There's another Harry Potter connection. These were written long before Harry Potter novels. So she says, I can offer you immortality, okay, and power. And Gwydion goes on and tells us what Ahran told him. I ruled Prydain long before Oran. And it was I who made him king over Anubin. It was I who gave him power, though he used it to betray me. But now if you desire it, you shall take your place on the high throne of Oran himself and rule instead. If you want power, you will take his place. Gwydion, gladly will I overthrow Oran, and I will use those powers to destroy you along with them. And she didn't like that response. Okay? So, he says, she threw her into F21. Time is not as you know it here. It's better that I do not speak of its torments. So he says, I withstood it. That is, I withstood the torments of that place, where even death will give up its secrets to him. If one overcomes. So he says, middle of 178. It is enough for you to know that I understood the workings of life and death, of laughter and tears, endings and beginnings. I saw the truth of the world, and I knew no chains could hold me. It's kind of like he's saying, he took the red pill, and now he sees everything clearly. My bonds were light as dreams. They couldn't tie me anymore. At that moment, the walls of my prison melted. Alani says, what about Akron? What happened to her? He goes, I don't know. Okay. I set out for Kirdathel again, and he says, that day, very bottom of the page, last sentence, a Gwithane plunged from the sky and flew directly towards me. To my surprise, it neither attacked nor sped away after it had seen me, but fluttered before me, crying strangely. The Gwithane's language is no longer secret to me. He could now understand. Crying, nor is the speech of any living creature. And I understood a band of travelers was journeying from the hills nearby, and a white pig accompanied them. Let me go back for a moment, because it just clicked. It is enough, let me back up even further. How long I lay there. Okay. And let me go back even farther. Page 178. Raging, she cast me into the lowest dungeons. I have never been closer to my death than in. F on F. Okay, that's what I thought it was. Then in F on F. How long I lay there, I cannot be sure. In F on F, time is not as you know it here. It is better that I do not speak of the torments. The worst were not of the body, but of the spirit, and of these most painful was despair. Even in my deepest anguish, I clung to hope. For there is this about F and F. If a man withstand it, even death will give up its secrets to him. I withstood it. And at the end, much was revealed to me which before had been clouded. He says, I'm not going to talk about that. Enough for you to know that I understood the workings of life and death, laughter, tears, endings, beginnings. I saw the truth of the world, etc., etc. I think, could be wrong, could be entirely wrong. He had an experience like of death. He had an experience kind of like of death and resurrection. You read about people who have quote unquote near-death experiences or after-death experiences. And what an awful lot of them say is they have that proverbial life in an instant. You see everything. Everything they've experienced. All in a moment. The good, the bad, the beautiful, the horrible, and then they come back. Right? I kind of wonder if he had something like that, but it was even deeper, because he talks about, it affected the spirit. And if he came to see the deeper reasons, let's say, for everything, right? So, he understands the Gwithane's language and stuff, so he retraces his steps. And since he was close at hand, so he found him, and page 179 in the middle. What was that? That is, what was the secret she knew? She knew the Horn King's secret name. Terran. I never knew his name could be so powerful. Really? What name seems to be really powerful to Terran? You might not call it a name, you might call it a title. Assistant Pig Keeper. Powerful how? It's like a weight of a ton of bricks on him. It subdues him. Because what does he think about the jobs of an assistant pig keeper? Lowest of the low, right? I mean, that's worse than being a trash collector. That's being the trash collector who picks up the trash by hand, who sweeps the curb. Yes, Gwydion says. Once you have courage to look upon evil, seeing it for what it is and naming it by its true name. In other words, we shouldn't call something he who must not be named, Harry Potter novels, but call it by its real name and thus reduce the fear of it. It is powerless against you, and you can destroy it. So when you call it by its true name really means what? Not just, Fred. The thing that's behind the name, the reality behind it, its essence, by acknowledging it for what it is. Right? Psychologists, counselors, priests, preachers and such will all say what about dealing with some horrible event? What do you have to do? You gotta accept it. Period. You can't move beyond it. You can't move through it without acknowledging it. It happened. You experienced it. Okay, you could talk about, all that kind of stuff. But you got to go through all that to overcome it. So he says, I couldn't have discovered it without him. She told me the secret in the forest. Taryn asks, where's the thing? Let it go. So, Gwydion gives gifts. All right? Page 181. Small gifts for great valor, he calls these. To Fluther shall be given one harp string. Though all his others break. Why does harp strings break? When he lies. Is it really lying all the time? Yeah. Embellishing. Exaggerating. So, one harp string won't break. Its tone shall be the truest, most beautiful. To Dolly of the fair folk shall be granted the power of invisibility so long as he chooses to retain it. Okay? So Fluther will have something that enables him to be what it is he's meant to be. Okay? A bard. Dolly will receive something that enables him to be what he is supposed to be, an invisible dwarf. To faithful and valiant Gertie shall be given a wallet of food, which shall be always full. He'll never be hungry again. Card 12. To Arlonwy of the house of Fleer shall be given a ring of gold set with a gem carved by the ancient craftsmen of the fair folk. It's precious, but to me your friendship is even more precious. And to Taryn of Caerdalban, choice of his reward has been the most difficult of all. Taryn, I seek no reward. I want no friend to repay me for what I did willingly, out of friendship and for my own honor. So what is Taryn thinking a reward is? Payment for services rendered. In traditional, like Anglo-Saxon society, Germanic society, when a thane goes to war for his lord, he's expecting something at the end of that process, assuming he lives. The Lord will repay him with part of the spoils of that war. It's entirely a reciprocal relationship or an exchange relationship. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Taryn is saying, I didn't do this to get anything in return. I did it. Why? I did it willingly out of friendship. The friendship is initially to whom? Henwin? But once he meets Gwydion, okay, and for my own honor. Gwydion smiles. Taryn of Caerdalban, and it finished already. You are still as touchy and headstrong as ever. Believe that I know what you yearn for in your heart. The dreams of heroism, of worth, and of achievement are noble ones. But you, not I, must make them come true. I can't give you those. Ask me whatever else and I shall grant it. What's Taryn want? I want to go home. Okay, we'll stop there. So, kind of back on a little bit. Book of 3, Black Cauldron for, we'll be talking about, we'll talk about the last chapter for, well, I'll say 5 or 10 minutes. It'll probably end up being longer.